How important would you say then that the album Strong Persuader was for you in separating between what you mentioned, the blues side, but also being played on the radio and having that kind of effect as well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, Strong Persuader was huge. And I always like to say that, you know, Strong Persuader to me isn't a blues record, you know, because it was such a, you know, there's not any straight ahead blues really on that record, but it was categorized as blues, I guess, for the lack of the categorization for this particular band at that time. I think we played more blues on the previous 3 records than we never played any blues on. But it was a succession. Those Strong Persuader was our 4th recording. And False Accusations was before that, then Bad Influence, and then before that was Who's Been Talking. And all of those records had more blues than Strong Persuader, but we had written songs, co-written songs with Bruce Bromberg and Dennis Walker, who were the co-producers for those records, up into and including Strong Persuader. And so we were just, you know, we'd come in off the road, and Bruce and Dennis would say, we're going to make another record. So, you know, they'd show us the lyric sheets and we just put the music to it, you know. So when we had the lyrics of Smoking Gun, I just sat there and going, and Richard Kemp's doom, doo 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 doo. Okay, we got a song, let's cut it, you know. And that's how we looked at it. But growing up, you know, like I said, in our teenage years, we wanted to, you know, be the blues guys, but we listened to the Beatles. I saw Jimi Hendrix a couple of times. You know, we played rock and stuff like that beforehand, and we grew up with my parents' record collection even before that. So we had all this different music in our heads and in our souls. And so we just treated the lyric as the lyric presented itself and put whatever the song called for. So we had this knowledge and information of all these different kinds of music, and that's what, you know, that's what came about.
It was more or less a natural progression
Just
of what you were doing as already.
And I think that it's still that way today with what we do. You know, so, yeah.
But in that sense, you mentioned Albert Collins and those kind of heroes, and then when you did come into the music industry, was it a shock that these people weren't as big as to everybody as they were to you? Was it something that?
No, I knew that already. I knew that already because we, you know, when we were going and buying their albums in the cutout bins, we knew that. But you know, that world was our world. You know, those were our heroes, and we knew that. But we would support them whenever they came through town. And as a matter of fact, Albert Collins played my high school graduation party, you know, which was great for our class to have voted for him. It wasn't me, it was our class, you know. So that was pretty cool.
But didn't you as well play in a house band for him for over a year?
We as the Robert Cray Band backed up Albert Collins on the west coast of the States from Vancouver, British Columbia, from Vancouver down to San Francisco, over a period of about a year and a half whenever he was on the West Coast, yeah.
Well, getting into the blues, so a lot of people give you partly credit for introducing blues, and well, it's not straightforward blues, but then blues and soul to a bigger public. Do you think nowadays, with the emergence of dance music and hip-hop, do you think there is still a way for the youth to get involved? Obviously, we now have someone like Gary Clark and the Black Keys. So where do you see blues and that kind of music positioned in the musical landscape?
Well, I mean, you know, the way that it's always been is that there's always going to be a blues category, you know, and there's going to be the dance and there's going to be everything. And those who are interested are going to find what they like, you know. And that's the wonderful thing about music, is there's so much to listen to. And for us, I enjoy lots of different music, you know. I'm a big fan of jazz, and you know, we've had players that have come in and out of the band that have turned me on to lots of cool music, and you know, I still go for it. And I think that, you know, just like it was for me when I was a teenager, and my friends, the world was, at that particular time, was still rocking. They were rocking hard, man. Led Zeppelin was out and all that stuff like that. But we wanted Buddy Guy. We wanted Magic Sam. So we found him.
Right. Let's go over to the new record then. Well, because again, this isn't a straightforward blues record. It's more inspired by soul. When in the process of making the album, or even before, was this direction? Did this direction become apparent?
It didn't become apparent until we started. Until we got into the studio and finally realized what we had. I mean, there were a couple of suggestions that Steve Jordan, our producer, had made prior to going into the recording studio, at least a month or two before. He sent me an email. He goes, "Robert, I think you'd kill it if you did Otis Redding's, Nobody's Fault But Mine." I said, "I dig that tune, And then a little bit later on, maybe a couple weeks later, he came up with a suggestion for the Mabel John song that, Your Good Thing's About to Come to an End. He said, "Man, you'll kill it," So I said, "Yeah, we can cut that one too." But I was thinking personally that we would cut those songs just in case the band and myself didn't have enough original material. When we had rehearsals with the band before going into the studio, everybody was showing up with these tunes that kind of had all this soul thing going on,
right.
And nobody knew prior to that. And so this is a week before going into the studio. So when we got to the studio, Steve heard the stuff for the first time, the band's material, plus the two songs he suggested, and we put everything together, and we had this soul record.
So it was more of a coincidence that everybody was thinking along the same lines.
Along the same lines, yeah.
Well, where did the songs come from then? You mentioned the Otis Redding song. How did Steve come up with it? Was it just something you heard and thought, well, Robert would be able to do this?
Well, it's a producer's job to come up with suggestions, for something. I mean, we've worked together in the past, and Steve knows I have this thing about soul music too, and so does he, And so he was thinking, for some outside ideas, which is a lot of times what producers will do. And so that was the case. But as far as like the songs I wrote, I mean, it was maybe just the frame of mind that I was in when I came up with the songs that I did. Now, Richard Cousins, our bass player, came up with the instrumental. He and his songwriting friend came up with Hip Tight Onions. And that's the first instrumental that we've ever done, and kind of paying homage to Booker T and the MGs,